Welcome to Time to Press Pause, real life stories from the C-suite. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of The Salient Strategist, and today I'm speaking with Andrea Schiavone. In our conversation, we explore how even the best laid plans for a pause can be interrupted by, life, because life is short and it doesn't always abide by your plans. She talks about how she had to pivot her pause, and in doing so, gave herself a different view of the world and came to a different conclusion than she originally expected. Andrea Schiavone is an operations leader and former SVP of Operations and Finance and interim CEO at a B2B tech marketing agency. Under her leadership, the agency achieved double-digit profit growth, tripled its pipeline, and was successfully acquired in late 2024. With over 20 years of experience spanning marketing, finance, user experience, and executive leadership, Andrea is known for helping high-growth companies scale with intention by aligning people, processes, and systems to drive sustainable growth and exceptional customer experiences. Today, she consults with startups and mission-driven organizations, including her current work with the American Pledge Foundation. Welcome, Andrea, to Time to Press Pause.
Hi, Ellen. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Andrea, you and I have known each other now for over 10 years. We were colleagues at Constant Contact, which was a very fond memory of mine. And I'm really excited to reconnect with you. I've invited you here because we did chat, and I know you have a couple press pause stories. So I'm eager to hear which one you're willing to share. So please do.
I have very fond memories of our time at Constant Contact as well. I have a few press pause stories, as you mentioned. I do want to talk about my most recent one, but before that, I'll let you know where I've been and where I've come from, and I think that's going to help set the stage and better understand why I'm in a press pause right now. So I, for the last 20 years, have been leading operations, finance, and marketing, both on the client side in B2B tech organizations, and then most recently, the last 10 years at marketing consultancies. My last consultancy, I started right before the pandemic, and we had massive growth, as many other digital marketing and agencies and organizations did. We had huge growth. We took an opportunity and advantage of that growth. And it was very quick paced, lots of change, bringing on 15 plus employees very quickly. And then 2023 hit. And we went the opposite way. And that brought on a lot of other challenges within the organization. And we went through a series of layoffs and, took a hit both mentally on myself and the founder and owner of my last organization. And so we did decide to sell the agency as we started growing back in 2024. And I did have about a 6-month runway, knowing that I was going to have a pause in my career. And it was a very intentional pause because of the ups and downs that we had. I was orchestrating this pause both from a timing perspective, Ellen, and a financial perspective. I knew exactly, being very financially pragmatic, exactly how much runway I would have and my family would have without having to do budget cuts from a personal family perspective, changing our lifestyle. I knew exactly what I was doing and how I was going to do it. And so that pause was supposed to be right before the holidays. And I had posted, I know the exact date, December 6th, that it was my last day. As most people do when there's a big change in their career, they post on LinkedIn because I wanted my network to know that this was my last day, this is my lessons learned, and this is what I was looking for next. Several hours after that post, we got a call that my brother-in-law was in a horrific accident, and we spent the next 5 days in the hospital while he was on life support fighting, and we lost him a week later. And that pause, that intentional pause, turned into a an unintentional pause. And so when I thought about coming on the podcast, I thought about other stories of people in my network that have paused, and there's so many different ones, right? There's ones where people pause because they want to travel and check off a bucket list item, because a colleague of mine paused because her mom was going through cancer and it was end of life, and she had that decision to pause. And I came into my pause as, at first, it being very intentional, and then it turning into a circumstance as some other. So I've had that, now that both sides of why I'm pausing. I thought I was going to be pausing to do some deep work on myself. And in turn, selfishly, I did not get that time. I spent, that time that I thought I was going to be pausing, nurturing and taking care of my family members and being there and mourning with my family members. And so my pause had extended. And so I'm still currently in this pause, doing lots of networking and trying to figure out what my next move is. I think very typically what other people do in this situation is they do some deep soul searching, meditation. I actually hired a career coach for the first time because I knew that, because of what happened with my family so tragically, that I needed somebody to hold me accountable. Typically, I'm the one that holds other people accountable. I recognized that I needed that help and support in that moment in order to career-wise move forward and understand where I'm going and how I'm intentionally going to be exploring those next opportunities. I'm reading a book right now called Fluke by Brian Klaas. Have you heard of that book?
I have not.
You know how a lot of people say like that happened for a reason. Whatever happens to you, it happens for a reason. Well, Brian talks about it's not because it happens for a reason. It could be because it happens by chance. He gives this really deep example of World War II and Hiroshima being bombed. The lieutenant that actually chose Hiroshima as the site had visited another town called Kyoto 20 years before. And Kyoto was the original bomb site, not Hiroshima. But because he had visited that site with his wife and had these deep memories and connection with it, he called that site off. It was Hiroshima that was bombed instead. But you just think about how wild that is, right? Because they had visited that location, it was saved. My neighbor, who's a scientist, recently got laid off, like many people we know right now, because the market is wild. She's a scientist. She does cancer research. About 4 years ago, she sat next to someone at a conference and she decided to look to her left and have a conversation with somebody. It is now because of that conversation 4 years ago, she's in a active interview cycle at that person's company. And so you just think about everything we do right now makes a difference. All of the connections and relationships, the pause that we take does make a difference in what happens next.
Yeah, and what happens next for sure. I think the ability to take a pause and just think things through, whether it's introspective or what's going on out there, the pause allows you a little space to breathe and think. So thank you for your current pause story. It's very interesting that you're in a pause. I definitely am sorry to hear about the loss in your family, and you told
Thank
that
you.
story with true honesty in your voice, and I think that will come through certainly for the listeners. I didn't know your whole story. You and I spoke previously and scratched the surface a little bit, but when you said I knew exactly what I was doing and how I was going to do it, my first thought was, oh, that didn't go as planned. Right. So the best laid
Yeah,
plans, right? And
of
you said
course.
it with such confidence. You explained why it went a different way. So now, are you able to sort of get back to your original intention with the hiring of a career coach? Is that helping you realign to the direction you had wanted to go?
Because that pause was meant to give me the time to do the deep reflection of what I'm doing next. The career coach helped me lay out 6 different paths. We landed on 6 different paths. Honestly, during that time, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so I know it's just like, on top of one thing on top of another, but that's where I am in life right now. That actually helped me because I had the time to think about it. That actually helped me make a decision that I need stability in my life right now. And so I don't think this is the right time for myself to build something on my own. I want to be part of something and help somebody else grow an organization versus me building something because I need the mental capacity to support my family and support my mom while also, working hard and contributing. I've also realized during that time that I greatly value coaching and mentoring, and I want that to be part of my journey. So I've gotten these pieces of what I want, and when you become more clear on what you want, it is easier for other people to then support and help you find that very specific next piece of work that you're going to be contributing to.
I love that when you're more clear on what you want. And it doesn't necessarily have to be starting your own business, it's how you're best going to serve, right? What really makes you get up in the morning. And it doesn't need to be the title of CEO. It can be any title as long as you're delivering on your purpose. So I love that when you're more clear. And a funny quick story. So I've been an entrepreneur and an employee back and forth throughout my whole career, and my business was growing. And
Hmm.
I had made the decision I'm going to grow the business. I'm going to hire an employee. I didn't want a virtual assistant, but it was going to take me probably another 6 or 7 months to get the money up where I could afford the taxes and the true
Yep.
employee. And Constant Contact came knocking.
Hmm.
And I really struggled with it. I was like, but my business. And I realized it was that clarity of this is what I want to do. And the role that was offered to me via Constant Contact was that clarity. This is what I want to do. In
It
some
was a
ways,
convergence for you, right? It was like, okay, these two things exist, and now they're converging because you put it out there and you knew what you were looking for. Yeah.
exactly. And in some ways, I felt like I was leaving my entrepreneur friends in the dust, right? Hey, I'm going to the corporate world. And my best friend said, oh, Ellen, wouldn't it be great for you just to do what you want to do and let everybody do all the other stuff? Like collections and billing and everything you
Okay.
have to do as an entrepreneur. And that clinched it for me. I was like, yeah, that does sound great. So I am back as being an entrepreneur. I am
Mm.
smarter and wiser this time around, but that also came with clarity as what I want to do, what I can deliver, what I'm comfortable and what my purpose is. So it's a hat I've worn many times before. So I'm a little more comfortable. I'm also in a very different position than you are. I was on LinkedIn this morning and posting that jumping into a new business and being an entrepreneur, it sounds great and it's a lot easier than it used to be because of all the tools that are out there. But just because you're really great at what you do doesn't mean you can run a business. I applaud that you did find clarity that, of everything going on in my life, I'm ready to jump into an organization that has an opportunity for me to be my best self there.
I agree. I recently got a request from a recruiter, and this was a very odd one for me. It is for a CEO role for a six studio yoga company, which I don't know if you know this. I have been teaching yoga for the last 10, 12 years. I'm a yoga instructor. And so the idea of merging my professional experience with a personal passion, like also lit this spark thinking, is that possible? Like people do this all the time, but I had not explored that before. And so the idea of merging those two things started to get really exciting for me. These connections and exploration happens, and then it produces something that you didn't even know was there.
I think that's true. I think when you get to remove yourself from the day to day and gain some clarity, it allows you to see. And I also think it allows or it creates an attraction of those things, right? When you're in the market for a car, every car on the road happens to be what
Mhm.
you're deciding on, right? But I think in life, and I'm very much the power of attraction, when you get clarity and you put out there, it's amazing what comes back to you and things you hadn't seen before. That sounds like a really unique and interesting opportunity for you.
I agree. I'm with you. Not in a kooky way, but I do believe the universe can produce what you put, but you have to put it out there because nobody else can put it out there for you. So once you put it out there and you start talking about it, then it does start to come back. I 100% agree with you,
But not in a kooky way.
but not a kooky way. Yeah.
Perfect. So, Andrea, I have a last question for you. What advice would you have for other leaders as to when they would identify it might be time for them to press pause?
Earlier, I touched on a couple different reasons why people have pressed pause in my circle. It can be very deeply personal, the reason why. It can be that you have recognized you're completely burnt out, you're not being present with your family, or there's other things in life that you want to explore and you've have this fear. A fear starts to come into play of, am I going to be stagnant or am I going to go and accomplish those goals in my life? Circling this back is that have learned from my brother-in-law who was 52, very too young, is that we're only here once. Yeah, and we have to live the life that we want to live because it could be gone. We cannot take it for granted.
Yeah,
Not getting too
absolutely.
kooky, but like
Yeah, no, life is
seriously,
short.
like yeah, it is short. And so I think recognizing that even just the idea or contemplation of a pause is worth exploring further if it's truly time to take that pause.
I agree. And I really love your advice. You mentioned things we've heard before, burnout and but your advice of when you feel fear of being stagnant, that's unique as far as this podcast is concerned, where what am I doing? Am I going to be stuck here? Really
You don't
interesting.
have to be, right?
Right.
Like, but that's the scary part that we all are afraid of. We're afraid of taking that next step because we don't know. I mean, just as a human race, we're afraid of change and what's beyond. But it is when we do take those chances and go beyond what we think our limits are, that's when the magic does happen. And we all know that. It's just that we sometimes need to hear it or be pushed or coached.
Glad that you reached out to a coach. That's having some introspection and knowing what the next step needed to look like for you. I appreciate all the wisdom you've shared, great advice, really heartfelt story, and personally wish you great luck in the next steps in your journey.
Thank you so much, Ellen. This was such a pleasure. I love reconnecting with you, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. If you're interested in learning more about Andrea, please find her on LinkedIn. If you're interested in learning more about me, please visit thesalientstrategist.com and join us again wherever you listen to your podcasts.